and how to plant them correctly, and then we'll talk about how to keep the pests from getting to them before you do. When you go to a garden center, all the strawberries pretty much look alike, but actually they're a little bit different. Some respond to the day length and bear their fruit all at one time. Others don't respond too much to day length, and they bear their fruit gradually throughout the summer. The ones that bear their fruit all at one time are called the June-bearing strawberries, although in some parts of the country they bear as early as April or as late as June. And then the ever-bearing strawberries are the ones that have most of their fruit early in the summertime, but then sporadically throughout the summer they'll bloom and have fruit more. It depends on what you want to do with your strawberries as to which kind of strawberry you'll get. Be sure and read the label, that'll tell you what to do with them. Now the next thing is, how do we plant them in our garden? Again, two choices. One is called the hill method. And you see I've started making a hill right here and pulled up the soil around it. This is particularly important for strawberries as they have good drainage around the roots. They love to have lots of good drainage around the roots. And once you've made the hill, we'll plant this central strawberry up on. See over here to the side of the strawberry, these runners. Now these runners are particularly important for the hill system and the system I'll describe in just a minute, because we'll use those runners to be daughter plants. And the way we'll make daughter plants is taking the runners and put a little soil on them every once in a while, and they will root right there in the soil and become little daughter plants that will produce strawberries eventually. Now when we've harvested all the fruit off of this mother plant, and at the end of the summertime, when she's produced all the runners that she's going to, we'll come in and clip her, and then these daughter plants will develop over the winter and the next spring. They will produce runners, which we'll put up into the top of the hill right here. We'll have a continuously renewing system of strawberries, all with very vigorous growth on them. The other way to plant strawberries is with sort of a long mound, and this is called the matted row system. You see I've made a wide row right here. 2 strawberries already planted. Let's plant the third one in front of you. Yeah, this is a good one. Take the rest of the peat pot off of it and sort of rough up those roots a little bit. And then we can plant it. Same sort of deal though. This plant will give us lots of runners. We can take those runners and spread them out over the side of this mound and from these other plants as well. And then over the growing season, once we have harvested the fruit from this strawberry right here, back in the fall, we'll take a mower or clippers or shears and come right through here, knock off all of these older plants, and then we'll use the daughter plants which have been formed on the side of the hill next year to produce new vigorous plants in the center of the hill. Now for fertilizer, you can use, well, there's various kinds of fertilizers. This is an organic fertilizer right here that's based on manure, and there are also chemical fertilizers that you can use as well. This is a chemical fertilizer usually used for vegetables and tomatoes. Just read the label, it'll tell you how much to use for them. Of course, strawberries need to be watered regularly, you know about that. One of the things though that you don't want to do on strawberries is to mulch them. Why? Because slugs and snails love strawberries, and if you put mulch there, that's just a hiding place for the slugs and the snails. So I never mulch my strawberries, but I do try to protect them from birds with netting like this. I use chicken wire usually over my long matted rows, and that keeps the birds away from them. If you don't protect your strawberries from birds, you won't have any strawberries. Now I can hear you say to yourself, wait a minute, I don't have a lot of room. How can I have strawberries if I don't really have a garden outdoors? Well, you could use a strawberry pot. You can buy these strawberry pots at garden centers very, very easily. And you see they have little lips that you plant the strawberry plants in, and a couple over the top right here. But when you water a strawberry pot, this is the problem that you're going to have. You put water in the top and it all comes out of the lips right here, and it really never wets the central soil core of this pot. So what can you do? I use a paper towel with ice in it. You just take this paper towel, fill it with ice, put it right up here at the top. It won't hurt the plants to have a little ice next to them, and it'll drip, 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 and wet the central core of soil right here with never washing the soil out around the lips of your strawberry jar. Now let's get back to that second question you had. We talked a little bit about slugs and snails. We talked about the birds. What do we do about rabbits? Easy enough to accomplish. We'll just use chicken wire, or in this case, rabbit wire. We'll just take some stakes and put them around our bed, put 2-foot-high chicken wire around it. Rabbits don't jump this high. They don't dig very much. And so we just put this around our bed. That'll keep the rabbits at bay. And I'm sure if you'll choose the right strawberry, fertilize, water them correctly, if you need to, use a strawberry pot. I can see a delicious strawberry shortcake in your future.
Thanks a lot, Walter. And one more tip for impatient gardeners. Alpine strawberry plants produce fruit in about 90 days after being planted. Now, the fruit is small, but very flavorful. Now for more fruit growing and for planting bananas indoors and growing pineapples. It's all online right now at DIYnetwork.com. And there's much more ahead here on African violets are a favorite houseplant despite the fact that they're not easy to care for. Their beauty is worth some extra work, as Jessie Mack shows us as she returns now with today's DIY Basic.
Do you have trouble growing African violets in your home? Well, here are some gardening basics to help these cute and cheerful little houseplants prosper all year long. First, consider the lighting. African violets like at least 8 to 12 hours of filtered sunlight. A good place to put it is usually by an east or north-facing window. If the leaves turn pale green or brown like this, that's a sure sign that the violets are getting too much direct sunlight. And make sure your African violets are warm enough by keeping the room temperature between 60 and 80 degrees. Now, when it comes to pots for your African violets, plastic or terracotta will do just fine, but make sure you choose one with plenty of drainage and a nice deep saucer. It's also important to choose a pot that fits nice and snug around the violet's roots. This is a good match here. It's short, wide, and the plant actually prefers a smaller growing space. When it comes to soil, African violets love a light, well-draining soil mixture. To create your own, combine 1 part potting soil with 1 part peat moss and 1 part vermiculite or perlite. African violets like to have their soil moist but not wet. Always test it with your finger before watering. I recommend watering your plants by sitting them in a saucer of water for about an hour. The plant takes up the water it needs through the pot's drainage holes. Finally, African violets love humidity, and the best way to do this is just to add some rocks into the bottom of your saucer, fill it with water about 1/3 of the way up, and place the pot on top. So let's recap my advice for growing African violets. Remember, make sure they get 8 to 12 hours of filtered sunlight a day. Use a light, well-draining soil and keep the soil moist but not too wet. And lastly, provide humidity by placing the plants on top of rocks and water in their trays. I'm Jessie Mack. Now you've got the DIY basics to do it yourself.
And here's one more tip from Jessie. It's a good idea to repot your African violet at least once a year to freshen up the soil. From African violets to strawberries, we've